Good evening. It is 7:01 and I will call the meeting to order. We do have quorum. At this time, I'm looking for approval of the agenda. Councillor Cox,
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? Administration, Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. A home occupation development permit was distributed to council late this afternoon. There is a copy on their desk. I apologize for the lateness. Normally we wouldn't bring such items to council, but this is a business owner wanting to get to business. So it is at council's discretion whether they wish to entertain it in the agenda tonight. I would add that development permits also have a public posting and notification of neighbors of the proposed business. So there is a public consultation process through there. So whilst it hasn't been in the agenda and available for public review as normally items would be, again, there will be the public component to the approvals of this DPA should council choose to proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
Yes, for it to be added to the agenda.
Yes, you also had your hand up. Was that,
That
in
was it,
regards to
yeah.
the same item? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments in regards to the agenda? Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. So if that item was added as a G Council Business E Administration item 3, I would like to add item 4 as well, which is a funding update. We've received several pots of money recently that I would like to advise council of.
Thank you. Any further discussion, changes, questions, or comments? Councillor Couvret and Councillor Cox are both amenable to the change. We have a motion that the agenda be adopted as amended. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. And we will move on to our delegation this evening. Welcome. Just a reminder to please use the microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, councillors, for your time this evening. I'll go briefly through the monthly report for September. I'll just touch on a few things. I guess we're having some success with our impaired driving initiative, and not to jump ahead too much, but we had our Operation Impact over the Thanksgiving long weekend. I'm sure you saw some of our check stops. We had quite a number of check stops. I don't know if you want to say it was positive result, but we didn't have any impaired driving charges. We had quite a number of vehicle contacts. I want to say we contacted around between 120 and 140 vehicles. Positive results, positive feedback from community members. People are quite happy to see us out. And so we issued a number of warnings for, minor offenses, people not having their driver's licenses on them, expired registration and whatnot. And but no, happy to say no criminal offenses, no impaired driving was noted. So it was good overall. And we've had some, I'll get into it, I guess, with the, when I get to the notable offenses there later on. And our prolific offenders, we haven't seen a real spike in property crime, I'm happy to report. So I think I've touched on it before, but when we're talking about property crime, a lot of the property crime that we're seeing isn't really what I would suggest is specific to a prolific offender. So like random property crime, people having randomly targeted, perhaps having their vehicle rifled through or having their vehicle stolen. So a lot of it is, somebody perhaps having a party and somebody vandalizing somebody at their house. So I wouldn't quite call it as targeted as somebody random. So we're seeing out of all those what we're calling property crime. Those would be thefts, break-and enters, mischief, which is damage to property. We had 16 reports of that during the month, and 3 of which would fall into that category of prolific offenders. So we did have some success during that month where individual, we were able to target that individual, put them on some enforceable conditions. So they're on on something now that we're able to follow through and kind of keep closer leash on them. So that has resulted in fewer calls for service associated to that person. So overall, that's a bit of a success. We've had a few driving complaints, and I'm happy to report that people in town seem to be pretty good about reporting them to us. So point out success story, I guess. On September 22nd, we had it was middle of the day, and it was around 1 o'clock, and there's lots of kids out, lots of people out in the community. And we had one person called, and then we had 2 people actually flag us down, and all regarding the same vehicle. And we luckily located the vehicle and resulted in a female from Hay River was charged and with impaired driving. She had blood alcohol levels of 140 and 130 ended up providing breath samples. And again, it was great. I think we had a total of 3 people kind of pointed us in the right direction to find that vehicle. So it was a good news story that we were able to locate that vehicle successfully. And had a couple other just incidents I want to point out there. So we had on September the 18th in the afternoon there, I think it was around 3 o'clock, we had a couple of reports of a red Chevy Tracker at the Petro-Canada. And unfortunately, so what had happened was we got a report that the vehicle, the occupants were intoxicated. They left the Petro-Canada and they were headed towards town. And the first report we got that the vehicle was headed to Hay River, and the second report we got that the vehicle was headed towards town. So the time delay on the 2 reports were mixed up. So we thought the vehicle was still in town. So we spent our time looking around town. And what had happened was the vehicle had headed to Hay River. And then later that night around 1 o'clock in the morning, the vehicle actually came back from Hay River and was involved in a collision out by the grader station. And all the occupants were ejected from the vehicle, and luckily nobody was killed, but they were seriously injured. So we weren't able to locate the vehicle prior to heading to Hay River. But unfortunately, I guess due to the differing information that we received and the time that we received it, we weren't able to locate the vehicle before it left town. And another incident on September 30th. We received a report in the morning of a rollover. Why I'm highlighting this, I guess, is the importance of people providing good information to our dispatchers, because a lot of the time we get people calling and then they get upset that they have to answer questions to our dispatchers, and they're wondering why they have to provide this information. Like, why can't I just say, it's near Joe's house in Fort Smith, the cops know where that is? Well, this is a good information. Example why. So it's near the fire tower. The cops will know where that is. And they hung up and they wouldn't answer on callback. Well, my take on where the fire tower was out on Highway 5 towards Hay River. So I drove to Highway 5 and I'm asking, and it was early in the morning. I met one car about halfway there and they didn't see any vehicle in the ditch. And I kept going and I kept going. Of course, I don't know if anyone's injured or not. And then I get there and there's no vehicle there. And it turns out it was just down the road towards Fitz, past what's called the radio tower, I guess. So, but the person didn't answer the phone on callback and they didn't provide any more information. So it was actually 4 hours later by the time I got down to the vehicle. So we're lucky that nobody needed immediate assistance. So just a reminder that, if you're calling 911, preferable, if you see an accident, to stop, check the occupants of the vehicle. Do they need medical assistance? Do we need fire to come and extricate the people? Otherwise, generally, if we just get a call like that, the initial response is we have to send police, fire, and ambulance, because we don't know what the occupants of the vehicle need. So sometimes you're needlessly tying up, emergency services. So just a reminder, we try to educate people on that sometimes when we can. Other than that, Our staffing, I think I've touched on it. So Amy Forbes is in the process of relocating right now. Derek Levesque is gone. He's up in sunny Tuktoyaktuk right now. And our corporal and our constable position. So little biography there from Constable Leduc, Stephanie Leduc. So her husband is Jordan Nordstrom. They're both members, so we're kind of getting a 2-for-1 deal, which is fantastic. So will be the new corporal. It's looking like December right now when they'll be arriving from Inuvik. Just got to do with the ferry and the ice road situation up there is when the moving truck can get in and get them. So she's quite excited to get here. She gave a little bit of a bio on herself and her husband and her family and whatnot. And then we're also, it looks like tentatively right now we were getting coming from depot sometime in early. Sorry about that. I did put a note in there about hiring guards, an ad for guards, and I guess word of mouth in a small community. So we've already got 3 applicants off this, and I haven't really even posted it around anywhere. So fantastic. However, so we put the applications out, and they are quite onerous. If anybody's ever filled one of them out, they're pretty in depth. So we are looking for guards, and specifically people that are looking for that late night shift from 1 till 9. So if anybody's interested or knows of anyone, we'll just come by the office and they can fill the security clearance package out. We can help them with that. But yeah, we did get a couple of applicants, which is great. And the basic requirements, it's on that ad, but it's a first aid course, which we will provide the course, and obviously shift work, and then have to pass our enhanced clearance, which is basically a clean criminal record background. And our summary of our files year to date. Again, as I mentioned last time, we're still a little bit behind where we were this time last year, and our prisoner count as well, we're still a little bit behind, a little bit under, which is also good news. Year to date, and last year total, let's say 238, and we're still about 100 behind, although we're approaching the end of the year. So that's good news as well. Not good news for the guards, I guess, where they made less money, but good news overall. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sergeant. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Councillor MacArthur?
Yeah, I have a question for you. I noticed a picture on the post office doors. Have you located that young gentleman?
Yes. Yeah. So that I think was one incident there in the past 3 weeks. So that's just part of our response, I guess, when youth go missing from that facility is to put a poster up. So yeah.
Supplemental, Councillor MacArthur? Councillor Westwell?
2 things. I don't think you have to hold the button down. Nope, that's okay. Just wanted to make. Yeah, exactly. You get tired finger after a while. My actual question then is to do with the Chevy Tracker rollover. Then, because you were unable to ascertain who the driver of the vehicle was, does that mean that there was no charges applied to any of the?
Yeah, that's correct. So in cases like that, you've got a large time delay. So you've got the vehicle by the time it's reported. So you've got no cell phone coverage, but it's the person that reported it has to drive quite a distance to get to a place where they can get cell phone coverage. And then by the time they get it reported to us, we have to travel out there. So generally, by the time we actually get to the scene, the people that were in the vehicle have now left the scene and made their way back to the community, either to home or to a hospital. And then usually the only evidence you have at that point is cooperation from the people in the vehicle. So, and the chances usually in most of those situations, people giving a statement as to who was driving is slim to none. So that's usually what you're going on at that point for evidence. So that's in this particular case, that was the outcome. And the only other situation, which as you can appreciate on Highway 5 at 2:00 in the morning, was there an independent witness that happened to be going by that witnessed it that can put somebody behind the wheel. And that's usually, not the case. You don't have somebody else that can put somebody behind the wheel. So.
Supplemental, Councillor Westwell.
No, thank you. That answered my question.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of being stopped on Thanksgiving weekend. I really appreciated that. Even had my license on me after a little bit of searching. So that's great. It's great to see you guys out there. And I actually, it's the second time I've been stopped in the past 6 months, right? So just at the check stop, which is great, especially when you read these reports and you see that maybe you don't want to be driving around on Friday evenings with all these impairment charges. Just two quick comments. The first is the repeated notices for the missing 14-year-old, I believe from Trail Cross. Facebook can be a pretty cruel place for some of those repostings, and I think Cabin Radio had dealt with a bit of flack. I'm wondering if the RCMP in Yellowknife would look at doing any kind of public outreach, like talk to CBC Radio and get on the radio and explain what the process is about these things now, so that the public has a better understanding of why these things are being posted in the way that they are.
Yeah, it's definitely something we can look at, and I guess because it's it's something that's frequently happened. As you can appreciate, it's happened. I think 3 or 4 times in the past few months, and people are seeing it, and I mean we do see the comments out there. This is the third time this has happened in a month. Why do they keep doing this? So it might warrant something in terms of an explanation as to why are we doing this repeatedly, right? And it probably would be worthwhile for us to put that out there to say, look, this is without violating privacy of the individual in question, right? But to say that it's a responsibility that we have each time somebody's reported missing, that we have to go through these steps to make sure that they're safe. And it's just a script that we follow to, we have to cross this off, this off, this off, and cover that off to make sure that these are all tools that we use to help locate these people, right? So, but yeah, that's a good point, because after a while, people are wondering, is this the first one? Is this the second one? Is this, has he been located the first time, or is this from a month ago? Yeah.
And it's certainly been explained to us what the change in response is and how in our community anyway, that often leads to a decrease in other forms of policing, because everybody has to stop what they're doing and do other forms of policing to respond. I'm sorry about your long drive to the wrong tower. We actually had an incident here, I think it was last summer, where we had our fire trucks and ambulance, or was it 2 summers ago, roll to a response which was much closer to Hay River than it was to Fort Smith. The lack of cell phone coverage is a huge concern along that. I don't know if the RCM, certainly the town has brought this up several times. Ground ambulance and highway rescue response, these are all issues that we deal with continually with Department of Municipal Community Affairs and Health and Social Services, and the lack of support around those kind of things. Cell phone coverage would make a big difference, even if it wasn't consecutive, but at least it was intermittent, so people could get to cell service faster and get more accurate information. I don't know if the RCMP have any leverage in mentioning that those are things that would help the use of RCMP time in the community. But if you're ever in an opportunity where you have the opportunity where you can put that forth, please feel free to do so.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Cox?
Just very glad to see the introductions provided by Constables Leduc and Nordstrom. So I look forward to welcoming them to the community when they arrive, particularly Constable Leduc. I understand she indicated she plays hockey, and I'm sure the hockey community will embrace her. On that note, I understand the detachment is unavailable to process criminal records checks for the remainder of the week. I was just wondering if you could perhaps explain.
Yes, we're a little, our clerk is out of the community for a week, and we're also running shorthanded for a few days with members. So it's just, we've had to eliminate that as something that we could provide for the week. So but we'll be back up to normal as of next Tuesday.
Mental, Councillor Cox. Any other questions or comments by council? Thank you again for coming to delegate this evening, and we definitely appreciate the work you do in the community, and we are very excited to meet the new corporal and constable when they arrive.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the approval of minutes. Councillor Couvret.
I move that the minutes of regular meeting 09-20 of September 15th, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Discussion. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 2 quick points. During the in the portion covering the council business, item G under Municipal Services Standing Committee, we were talking about the trespass issue, and Councillor Campbell during that discussion had suggested the town consider requesting a letter of support from the other community governments, the Indigenous governments, for the snowbird, the lot that we've been talking about. But I also think it would be really helpful for us to get a letter of support for the overall development of the Riverside Park and what their thoughts are towards that end. And the other item I wanted to quickly mention was during the council session, Councillor Cox had made some kudos to the Shop Local campaign that was run back in September. And I just want to remind everybody that the big shopping season's just around the corner, and that Shop Local for Christmas is probably even more critical to our local businesses. So wherever practical and possible, please use our local businesses for your Christmas needs.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. In response, I wholeheartedly agree with the Shop Local events and shopping local all year round. Secondly, I did speak with President Heron this morning, who is looking to set up a meeting with the other leaders this week, so I can bring the item of the lot in question, but also the Riverside Park to the Indigenous leaders for discussion at our meeting. Thank you. Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. I believe we had some business arising already. Is there any other business arising from the minutes of the last regular meeting of council? Okay. None noted. We will move on. Any declarations of financial interest? And moving on to council business, introduction and consideration of committee reports. The Corporate Services Standing Committee. Can I get a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you. I move that the Corporate Services Standing Committee minutes from October 6, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have DPA 030-20. Councillor Cox.
I move that DPA-030-20 submitted by Louis Siebert to operate a home occupation consulting services business from Lot 409, Plan 207, 46 Pine Crescent in Fort Smith be approved.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Bolio. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have DPA 032-20. Councillor MacArthur.
I move that DPA 032-20 submitted by Jody Doherty to operate a home occupation construction and renovation services business from lot 1623, plan 2895, 37 Wandering Spirit Street in Fort Smith be approved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Appointment of acting SAO. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Couvret.
I move that Paul Kaiser, Director of Municipal Services, be appointed Acting Senior Administration Officer for the period of October 13th to October 16th, 2020.
Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Westwell. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Moving on, we have Community Services Standing Committee. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Campbell.
I move that the Community Services Standing Committee minutes from October 13th, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Cox. Discussion? Deputy Mayor Smith.
Sorry, just to not to put the administration on the spot, but since it was such a contentious issue a couple of weeks ago and you were away last week, I'm just wondering if there's any update on plans for the snowboarding park, if you got pricing for power given the recent turn in the weather.
Yeah, I think the operative point there, the salient point is the recent turn in the weather. Season is gone for us. The cars are in place. They're going to stay in place. We have until June to move them. We're still searching for the quote to bring the power down to the bottom of the hill. That is the one outstanding price we're looking for. That work has to happen regardless of where the cars are located. But right now we're looking to get the power hooked up back to the wash cars where they currently sit. So a whole bunch of bits and pieces have to be reinstalled for that to happen. But we hope within the next week or so they should be up and running because it looks like people can start sliding already out there. So, yeah.
Supplemental, Deputy Mayor Smith.
No, just thanks to yourself, your staff, and the contractors that dropped everything to potentially move them on a moment's notice if we didn't have that last minute extension.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have an appointment. Councillor Couvret.
I move that Eric Chalker be appointed to the Economic Development Advisory Board for a term ending December 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Moving on to municipal services. Councillor Westwell.
I move the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes from October 13th, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Councillor Cox.
Just a note, I did, there is a typo at the bottom of page 2. I did flag it with Ms. Reed earlier, but under the item 5C, the bylaw department, the bylaw officer was having a strong presence in September, not October.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. During the discussions of this particular municipal services meeting, I brought up the question whether there was any holdback on the water and sewer contract pending the completion of the paving and deficiencies. And at the time, the acting SAO wasn't able to provide an answer. I was just wondering if there's an answer available this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. I'm not sure if Mr. Morrison has been briefed on that. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. I had a thorough read of the minutes from the last meeting, and I pity poor Director Kaiser and the onslaught of questions he was submitted to by council. No, we do maintain a holdback, but we also pay for work done, and so paving hasn't been done yet, and so that work has not been paid for. So there is still outstanding work left to be done, as well as a holdback to address deficiencies. And so there is paving to be done. There a list of so there's outstanding work left to be done, such as the paving and the completion of some of the drainage work, as well as there is deficiencies with work that has been done. I think all of council has been quick to point out the 10-foot hydrant sitting on the Pinecrest lot, as well as initial camera review of some of the sewer lines shows some dips. We're throwing some engineers at that. Hopefully we don't have to dig anything next spring, but we're still figuring that out. So that is the difference between a deficiency, a piece of work that wasn't done appropriately, and work not done yet. And so we have money, and all indications are that Rose is coming back next year to finish it up. Hopefully it's a quick job with some sidewalks and some replacing some of the interlocking stone that was pulled up, finishing up the drainage and doing the paving.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Supplemental, Councillor Couvret. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Morrison.
In review of the minutes, there were questions from council about GST and how that is taken into consideration when establishing spending limits and budgets and whatnot. So the town pays GST but gets it refunded. And so we tend to not take GST into consideration when budgeting or establishing budgets when considering spending limits. GST is outside of that. There are also some questions around traffic, and I think, as Councillor Couvret pointed out, was that our last discussion that I'd participated in is that we would allow for a traffic plan in the 2021 capital plan to allow us to provide a holistic review of traffic flow and vehicle flow, not just necessarily vehicle traffic, but pedestrian traffic, ATV, power sports traffic through the community, so that we can properly consider aspects such as intersections, coordinate those with lighting, coordinate those with speed limits, and try and do it on a town scale. Of course, if council has specific concerns, they have shown a willingness in the past to add the occasional four-way stop, and that option remains available to them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any questions or comments, Councillor Westwell?
I just wanted to note on page 5, that is probably an error on my part when I was conveying discussion around the traffic bylaw that I have actually seen the original bylaw, but I have not seen a version of the approved bylaw that you could read the map. I was on council when it was adopted, so I have physically seen it.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from council? So the motion is that the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes from October 13th, 2020 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have the flat deck tender. Councillor Westwell?
I move that the $31,000 be added to the 1-ton flat deck capital project from CPI and that the tender be awarded to Aurora Ford in Hay River for the bid price of $80,587 plus GST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have a vacuum truck tender. Councillor Couvret.
I move that $8,000 be added to the vacuum truck procurement project from gas tax and that the tender be awarded to Aurora Heavy Truck Sales for the bid price of $187,360 plus GST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. And fire hydrant replacement. Councillor Cox?
I move that $20,000 be added to the fire hydrant replacement project from gas tax for the replacement of 2 fire hydrants.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bolio. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. We have no enactments of bylaws or policies this evening. We did have a couple of appointments that were passed earlier in the meeting, so we will move on to mayor and council and board representative updates. Councillor Campbell?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Condolences to the Ernie Tronjo family for passing of Ernie. And good work to the municipal crew after the snowfall on the weekend. They did a wonderful job cleaning up. And one question, what's the status on our new water truck? And that's all I have. Thanks.
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you, Your Worship. We received correspondence from the vendor, I think it's Aurora Ford, today actually saying it's about 2 weeks away. Some cabinets and some plumbing has to be added, has to be deckled, and it's ready to go. So we'll be seeing it. We'll be seeing it shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Couvret?
Thank you, Your Worship. Was sort of a bit distressed reading the news just before I came to the meeting to hear that there is a positive case of COVID in Inuvik. The presumptive case did test positive, and that sort of strikes home that the risk of COVID-19 to the NWT in our community is still a legitimate risk. And as such, encouraging everybody to follow proper social or physical distancing. I've noticed on Facebook a couple of times over the past few weeks, people concerned about people not following their isolation or quarantine requirements. And this even more stresses the need for people to have to buckle down and take one for the team, for our community. If you're required to isolate, please do not take the risk of spreading the disease amongst our community. We don't we don't need it and we don't want it. As well, I recently attended as the town representative, the museum board meeting. They've been quite busy. They were pleased to announce that they have a new manager for the operations, Ms. Roma Nazwa, previously from our fine chambers here. I think they have themselves a very good candidate to run their operations. They're basically running the museum. There are some restrictions limiting the number of people that can be in the building at any one time. They also indicated that since March, their revenue has significantly declined due to the lack of people coming in and renting the facilities, their gift shop revenues and things like that. That's been offset somewhat by a reduction in the expenses to operate, but still they're looking for some creative ways to do fundraising. So if anybody has any ideas that they could pass on, they would probably appreciate those. And the final note, I guess, with that is they did hold their annual general meeting in September. Most of the board is the same. They did changing of chairs, and Mike Keyser is now the new chair of the Northern Life Museum and Cultural Center. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. Councillor MacArthur.
Also, my condolences to the Tronjo family as well, and kudos to the Public Works Department for getting the sidewalks and the streets cleaned. Also, I'm not glad to see the snow here, but I am glad to see it. It'll fill up the potholes on Brennett and McDougall. I bought a set of hip waders for the spring already. Also, kudos going out to Jeff Schwarzenberger and administration for a job well done in the funding department, and I will let Mr. Morrison explain to that later. And that's all I have for now. I didn't want to steal his thunder.
Thank you, Councillor MacArthur. Councillor Cox.
A couple of items. First, it's good to see all the winter sports are starting up and running, getting going. The ski club had their cleanup on the weekend. Minor hockey and the skating clubs at the arena have also started in the last week, and I understand curling is in the process of putting in the ice, and they hope to be up and running in the next couple of weeks. So I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and recognize the work that the volunteers involved in those organizations have put in to apply for exemptions to proceed with their activities during the pandemic. Second, we are now in October 2020. We have 1 year left in our term. I think it would be prudent of council to undertake another self-evaluation exercise early in the new year, and reflect on the goals we set at the beginning of our term, and see what we can achieve before the election in October 2021, including one of our identified goals was the election of DEA representatives that represent the town of Fort Smith, our 3 representatives on our DEA. We're going to request that they be elected. So now would be the time to proceed, I guess, with whatever it needs to take, whatever we need to do to make that happen. And then a reminder to Mayor and Council that tomorrow is our lunch at the arena to meet with residents and discuss whatever they would like to speak with us about. And the topic for tomorrow is budget 2021. And that is all at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you. I have a few items to bring forth. I guess first, I look forward to hearing about the lunch tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm not able to make it, nor am I able to make the bylaw meeting on Thursday due to work commitments both days. Secondly, Mr. Morrison was talking about the traffic flow. Having a better traffic strategy for the community. I know there's been a lot of discussion at the Recreation Advisory Board recently around active transportation, as well as pertinent discussion at council around paving of the Tabacha Trail. So I hope that I really liked what Mr. Morrison said about street lighting and safety, the paramount focus of public safety, as well as other declarations that we made in the past, such as healthy, active communities. And I hope that they can all be interwoven in some kind of way to be realized in a very effective plan. Like Councillor Cox, I'd like to pass along my congratulations to multiple youth sports groups for doing a lot of jumping through hoops and a lot of perseverance, working in partnership with the town and the government of the Northwest Territories to ensure that they have safe spaces and good operating protocols in this COVID time. So I know a lot of work has gone into that on multiple levels by multiple organizations, and I think everyone's just excited to get back to some form of normalcy after 6 months of unnormal. Rose Construction, careful what I say. Very disappointing to hear that a one-year project is now going to bleed into three construction seasons. Very, very disappointed, especially in the first year of construction and the lack of timely action by the contractor. I'd be curious if administration would be amenable to sharing a list of deficiencies with council. Not sure how appropriate that is, but I think it'd just be good for council to be as informed as possible, considering how this project is dragging out. Lastly, the COVID Secretariat. I'm happy to hear some kind of vibrant discussion in the Legislative Assembly this week around regular MLAs questioning the expenditures that are being planned on COVID Secretariat. As far as I'm aware, there has been no move by the government of the Northwest Territories to look at additional funding for municipalities for COVID expenses. I know there's been requests, but I don't think there's been any commitments. There's been some money from the federal government, but I think that's all going to larger cities with huge public transportation issues and whatnot. Recognize that our revenues are down and our facilities are probably more expensive than ever to operate right now because there are extra incurred costs, there's extra staffing costs, there's cleaning costs, and our user groups are there's less revenue coming in from user groups because there's more restrictions placed on how many people can be in facilities. So we haven't seen our third quarter variance yet, but I'm expecting that it's not going to be great, and we really need to advocate that in the GNWT. It's not just about surveillance and compliance from the Protect NWT standpoint. There's other governments that are struggling with COVID-19 impacts, and we need to be very vocal about that. I also think that we need to start being very proactive around engagement on a possible winter road south into the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. Hearing some rumblings around how that might impact local use and possibly create a much more strict and stringent border control mechanism. So I think if we get on that quickly and start being involved in those discussions, Fort Smith residents, Fort Fitzgerald residents, Smith Landing First Nation residents might have a better long-term outcome. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you. Oh, just wanted to say I was very happy to learn that this council meeting is being broadcast live. It's something that's been talked about for years, and for it to be finally happening in a meaningful way in our own council chambers is very exciting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Councillor Bolio.
No concerns tonight other than just sending our condolences to the Toronto family.
Thank you, Councillor Bolio. Councillor Westwell.
I'd like to start by kicking off where Deputy Mayor Smith left off, which is to say that it is a of endless excitement to me that our 10 plus years ago we suggested strapping a webcam on the wall and just putting it on YouTube has finally come to fruition. So it was an odd way to get to this path, but it's fantastic, and I'm very excited the administration and staff and council's all supportive and trying it out. I'm sure there will be improvements as we go, but it's very exciting. So hello, all those in YouTube land. For those people who are, we'll say, watching digitally, please watch our committee meetings. There's actually a lot more discussion that happens at the committee meetings sometimes than just approving the motions on a council meeting night. Tune in Tuesdays. With that, I wanted to talk maybe about some good news, which sounds like we'll have some more later. But we came into the summer season knowing that there was going to be a lot of disruption due to COVID, knowing there was going to be a lot of disruption due to construction, and we ended up there being even more disruption due to weather. That said, now that the snow is flying, it's not all bad news. I think I recognize that there has been some new homes being built in the community, or at least prepped to be built in the community. New businesses opened in the community. A busy construction season that, though, did come with impacts, some negative impacts, also construction projects that had some positive impacts as well. Unexpected projects like the road into Fitz, and even with some of the restrictions with COVID and interactions, it still seems like we had fairly successfmore summer, all things considered. Our own paving project maybe not included in that, but still we had one of the wettest seasons on record, I think, in the Northwest Territories, the second wettest on record. So I try to recognize that as much as possible, that though it is disappointing to see a third-year project, hopefully we'll get to see the end of it before the election, because that may or may not come into play. That said, I think it's really exciting to see that, through a spring and summer that was a challenging for everybody, that there has been, things have still moved forward. Construction has still happened. New businesses have opened. New small businesses are applying for, and things are still moving along. Fort Smith is still ticking along rather nicely, and I think that's something that we can all kind of take a minute to appreciate and be rather proud of. Other than that, I wanted to recognize that Roma has probably done her last minutes with us, and as we were reading the book of minutes that we generated for the last few meetings, and that we will continue to generate, welcome Katie back to our chief author of massive minute books, and just thank Roma for the excellent job she did while she was in her position, and some of the ridiculously long and detailed minutes that we continue to create for our, or make our staff, the staff, write for us, and appreciate all the work that they do. And with that,
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. There are a few things that I have to cover this evening. First, I did speak earlier about the meeting with the Indigenous leaders. We do continue to meet about once every month to 6 weeks. I also have the meeting with Minister Thompson on Friday afternoon. And I had sent out an email to council in regards to a meeting with the Premier for Thursday evening. At the time, I had brought forward either attending virtually or in person. I did receive one response that it was better to attend in person. I'm not sure that I would be able to attend virtually. So that meeting is set for Thursday evening, and the meeting with Minister Thompson is on Friday afternoon. Again, a reminder that we have the brown bag lunch tomorrow at noon for mayor and council with the public, and our discussion is the 2021 budget. As I spoke to you last week, I was very pleased to host Mayor Kulikowski in her staycation to the South Slave region. She was here with us this week, and while we were hoping to go berry picking, our berries were covered in snow on her day that she arrived. So we had to make alternate plans. This week, our letter went out to Minister Simpson. I'd like to thank the Post-Secondary Education Committee for the hard work that they provided in getting that letter out to the minister and to the Legislative Assembly and to the leaders across the territory. We also have. I was watching the Legislative Assembly this afternoon, and MLA Ryland Johnson spoke very strongly in support of the funding for community governments, and that the GNWT's mandate is to have this addressed by 2023, and he feels that that more progress should be made, even in this this budget that they are currently discussing. So we definitely appreciate the support of the MLAs in getting this funding to municipalities. It is absolutely needed. In the most recent Mayors and Chiefs teleconference, we did speak to the COVID Secretariat, the jobs, and the lack of advertising for the jobs, where these jobs are coming from, who's filling them, whether they are backfilling these positions. I did speak to this in last week's meeting, but we are still looking for answers. Some of the jobs that they said were being filled through casual postings, but there is no advertising for those postings. People are just supposed to put their names in for casual and then find out what jobs are available, apparently. And I would also like to congratulate the Salt River First Nation. I believe they are starting the construction on their housing units. And again, my condolences to the Toronjo family. And that is everything that I have for this evening. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. Actually, I would suggest that the first two items under administration are for you, Your Worship. The first item I is Post-Secondary Education Committee letter to Minister of ECE, which I don't know if Council checked their emails late this afternoon, but the letter was distributed wide and far, and it's starting to solicit praise from other community governments.
Thank you. I apologize that I wasn't able to get the letter included on Friday for inclusion in the package. It did go out to councillors, and I think it can be posted to the town's documents on our website. Are there any questions or comments from councillors in regards to the letter? Councillor Cox?
I know it's lengthy, but I do think how it ended up being formatted and submitted was very effective, and I look forward to continuing to see how other communities respond to the letter. And thank you again to the members of the Post-Secondary Education Committee for taking the time to put that together. Well done.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So moving on, the upcoming mayor and premier meeting. Mr. Morrison, did you have comments?
Certainly, just as you noted, you did solicit input from council as to what topics to bring before the premier. And all I would suggest, for transparency's sake more than anything, is if council wished to move that the mayor travel to Yellowknife for this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Couvret?
Thank you, Your Worship. Following up on that, I will move that Mayor Napier be approved for travel to Yellowknife for, oh shoot, don't know the dates, but this Thursday and Friday for meetings with the Premier and the Minister of Lands.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Campbell. Discussion? Councillor Cox?
Just to note that I understand that the mayors of Inuvik, Yellowknife, and Hay River will also be meeting, and that I think it's really important that the town of Fort Smith has a presence at those meetings. So that's great that you're able to go in person.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Hay River, Inuvik, and Yellowknife will be attending for the meeting with the Premier. I will be attending the meeting with the Minister of Lands. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. Before I move into the two items that I put on the agenda here, just a quick note. There was some talk about COVID and also some talk about recreation. So I think that I'm going to begin the informal EMO committee meeting minutes just to start pulling all our community government partners together to start talking about preparations coming into the presumptive second wave of COVID. With respect to recreation, we're going to continue, unless I'm directed by council differently, to roll out recreation programs in the committee until the chief public health officer decides to step back from phase 2. And we've been quietly opening up town facilities. While you might see other communities, big fanfare, their pool is open. Our pool has been open for a month. It's booked weeks in advance. It's booked to capacity. The lane swims are all full. The rentals are all full. It's going, as Councillor Cox stated, the arena fully subscribed. We've actually extended hours at the arena. I think there's an additional women's hockey skate that was added to the schedule. Curling is up and running. Squash is you can play. You can play other people now. It used to be just yourself or your family, but now you can have a squash bubble, so that's open. Mums and Tots is open. Daycare, of course, after school care is functioning 100%. We have the library's been opened to its holding capacity for its size, and so we've greatly increased the number of people allowed there. The snowboard park's going to start going soon, and the only program we have left to open up, and we're putting the planning in around that, is to get our youth drop-ins happening for the weekends. So recreation is happening in the community of Fort Smith. So moving on to the next item was the late to council development permit application. The briefing notice before council on their desk. It's for Randy Villeneuve, a home occupation permit for this and that carpentry. It is a carpentry service. It is on 72 McDougall Road. He owns the property. It is zoned R1. He is aware of all the requirements of a home occupation. he described his proposed business activities. They don't sound like they will impact his neighbors. Materials and equipment will be stored in the garage, no hazardous materials on site, minimal activity at his home, and what little activity will be in his garage, and no impact on vehicle or pedestrian traffic in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor MacArthur.
I'll move that Randy Villeneuve be DPA -35-20 be given a home occupation permit to operate this and that carpentry from Lot 2, Block 18, Plan 212, 72 McDougall in Fort Smith be approved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvrette. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Next topic.
Next, to talk about some money that we have seen come down recently. We have been approved for $50,000 from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources for fire abatement activities in the community. There's actually a meeting happening tomorrow between the town and ENR to discuss areas where we wish to do that work. As council knows, they approved, I think, $150,000 for a fire abatement work as well. The two areas that had been identified have both been put out to tender and awarded. We have additional funds left, so we're looking to add that money to the ENR money and try and get some more substantive work. Most town-owned lands have been completed at this point for fire abatement purposes, and so we're going to look, especially since we're sharing with GNWT money, we're going to look to expand our fire abatement initiatives onto commissioners' lands to get this work done. The next one is, I spoke with CanNor, Federal Joint Funding Group, and we've been approved for $50,000 for our Economic Development Zone Initiative. This is an exciting and exciting initiative to try and create tactile economic development in the community. We often speak, I think the town has been good at talking about tourism as an economic development initiative, but it's struggled when we've tried to cast our net further into more general economic business development initiatives. We've done surveys, we collected data, we know where we're weak, we know where we're strong, but this economic development zone is an actual on-the-ground economic development initiative where we're looking to take a parcel of municipal land and divide it up into industrial lots within the community. There's currently a lack of industrial land in the community where people can go start businesses. And then part of the assessment will be to approach the Northwest Territories Power Corporation to gain access to interruptible power at a subsidized rate so that we can lure businesses that have high energy requirements. And so the Power Corporation, initially rolled out the interruptible power to for heating purposes to governmental organizations, and they rolled it out for heating purposes to commercial enterprises. We know that they've considered using this interruptible power to support large industry. And so I think the next logical step is that they consider using this interruptible power, this inexpensive, low cost, 8 cents a kilowatt hour interruptible power to support small and medium sized enterprise in our community. And so that's what this money from CanNor is going to be for. It's for a business case analysis as well as an engineering design development to determine the actual costs to bring in electricity, to bring in power, to bring in water, to subdivide the site. So it's an exciting initiative. It will be the first of anything similar in the Northwest Territories, and I hope it will draw the attention of small to medium-sized industry and enterprise far and wide. The next one, I have an advised council. We received an extra $21,000 from municipal and community affairs. It's just a top-up money to money we already received from them for sport and wellness activities. And so they've added additional money to that pot, and it is COVID-related funds. This is the one pot of COVID-ish money we have seen, is this money to try and support recreation in COVID times. There is talk of broader COVID money out there, some whisperings of it. I have not officially heard of anything yet. One initiative council is already well aware of is our strategic marketing plan, funded in part through ITI funds. Letters have gone out to all stakeholders in the community, whether they're stakeholders in tourism, in business ownership, or people that and organizations that contribute to the livability of the community, because part of the strategic marketing plan is to promote the town as a destination to move to. Introductory letters have gone out from the town, and introducing our consultant, who is subsequently contacting these same partners, and will be inviting them to complete online questionnaires or participate in in-person meetings and interviews as that work rolls out. And finally, the big one is that the much talked about and alluded to ECE money for the daycare has officially been approved. So we are a recipient of $250,000 for our daycare. While I appreciate Councillor MacArthur's statements, and kudos to Mr. Schwarzenberger, who put the official application in for the money, please understand that the history behind this money goes much further than that, and it starts with the hardworking volunteers of the Daycare Society, who lobbied aggressively at multiple levels of government. And I think actually their lobby effort began before this current sitting of the legislature, to get money for affordable daycare. And ultimately, I think they were disappointed, because this is not that money. While people might say, here is money for daycare, this is not universal affordable daycare money. This $250,000 sounds a lot, and it is if used appropriately, but if it's used to pay for people's childcare, it would only last a couple of years, and then it would be gone, and people would be back to paying unsubsidized rates. So this money, it was given to us for infrastructure, and I'm hoping the council will decide to add this money to the CRC renovations work to fund additional work specific to the daycare within the facility. So we are starting to get the updated designs that have resulted from the community and staff consultation effort put through by the consultant a little over a month ago, and we are internally reviewing it. And then once we're comfortable that the information heard and sent back to us by the consultant represents what was heard from the community and heard from our staff that will be operating this facility, it will be costed, and it will be brought back to council and brought to the public for review to make sure that they feel it reflects what they've heard. But there is substantial work in the daycare component itself that will most likely account for this $250,000 of ECE money. Will go directly to the daycare renovations portion. As we all know, our daycare operations are higher, not significantly, not substantially, but are higher than what some of the other day home providers are charging in the community. And we know that what we are charging is a break-even charge. The town does not profit off the provision of services to residents. This is a break-even cost based on paying a fair and livable salary to childcare workers. And so I think that this exercise we've gone through on the town should show all of the Northwest Territories what it costs at break-even to run a daycare with properly paid employees with appropriate pensions, benefits and union protections. And I think that when the GNWT sees the $65 a day that it costs to put a child in such a daycare, that their energies should be put into subsidizing that amount of money. Subsidize the $65 a day we're charging. They already have programs in place, subsidies, that the current $65 per head per day uses. Increase those subsidies to create childcare, because to expect us to provide childcare at a lower rate at the child to provider ratios that are required by the GNWT means we can't pay a livable salary to our staff. And that's not sustainable, right? So this money is coming from the GNWT. This money was initiated by a hard press by our daycare society to get universal childcare, but this is capital money to go in to renovate a facility. This is not universal childcare money. This is not a per child per day subsidy rate, and that need remains outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I agree that the GNWT and specifically the Department of Education, Culture, and Employment, which covers childcare, should be aware of the amount that it does take to, that we had to pay in order to get applicants to the position. The Daycare Society had advertised 2 years, was it 2 years to get the positions filled, and were unable to, and before they finally came to the town for assistance in getting these positions filled. So absolutely, I think that we do need to get those positions, those amounts to the territorial government and to other governments and municipalities across the territory for support, for funding, for early childcare. Any questions or comments, Deputy Mayor Smith?
Just a quick comment. Thank you for a very thorough update there. It really warms my heart that we have so many hardworking town staff, specifically within community services, economic development, who are working in partnership with other advisory boards to leverage pots of funding that exist and grow our community in multiple ways. I don't think I even wrote down every little item that you listed here. Good to know with $27,000 in sport, wellness, recreation funding from MACA, that's not going to cover our lost revenues, let alone enhance programs. There needs to be lots more. We've heard rumors, but there's nothing substantive, while there still is a lot of other discussions about how the GNWT is spending a lot of money on COVID-19. The question has to be asked is, what is the best way to spend that money? So I look forward to more debate in Legislative Assembly. Lastly, on the ECE childcare funding, I'm glad we got that commitment in this week before the same department has the opportunity to read our letter and the criticisms of their post-secondary education strategy and framework.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Any further questions or comments by council? Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I did only speak to daycare, but these are all very exciting. Thank you again. We have no proclamations this evening, so we'll be moving on to absence of council members. Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillor Bolio be excused from the Community and Municipal Services Standing Committee meetings on October 13th, 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvrette. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillor Pishinger be excused from the regular meeting of council on October 20th, 2020.
Seconded, Deputy Mayor Smith. And we did receive notice that Councillor Pissinger would be away for, would be excused per our council bylaw and policies. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Date of our next council meetings: Corporate Services on November 3rd, Community and Municipal Services Standing Committee meetings on November 10th, and our next regular meeting of council on November 17th. At this time, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Cox?
I move that the meeting be adjourned at 8:21 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you and good night.